Yeah, so large B-cell lymphoma is we know the most common aggressive B-cell lymphoma, and even when I was a fellow, the prognosis for those patients are pretty poor, especially those who lack of the option. For example, at the time was autologous stem cell transplant, which occupies majority of patients who have no access to transplant or they're not in a good condition to go to transplant. So it has always been an unmet need. And what drove me is I've always had a passion for immunotherapy. I'm a strong believer in the power of the immune system. Yeah, so I think that it's gratifying to see how much immunotherapy has really becoming a game changer. Yeah, so really great question. Really, Chin, this really speaks to how we manage those patients with relapsed refractory large B-cell lymphoma, how we get most patients into a very durable remission. CAR T really has revolutionized how we manage those patients in the relapsed refractory setting. Just as you point out, not every patient have access or not every patient is able to go to CAR T because of some logistical concern. CAR T cell therapy has been shown to can induce the durable remission, but for those patients who are not candidate for curative intent, such as CAR T or such as the autologous stem cell transplant, usually those patients will be treated, managed what we call a palliative setting, meaning that they might get into remission, but it might not be durable, and they might receive a less intense, less effective treatment. So the goal of SUNMO is really to use novel targeted immune-based regimen to see whether we can offer high effective treatment to that patient population. So we're not just managing those patients in palliative setting. Yeah. So STAMO study is a global phase 3 study. So it's not really cherry picking patients. So many sites from around the globe has joined the study. What the study aim to do is for those patients who are transplant ineligible, meaning that lack of a curative option. What can we do? So basically, just randomized patient 2 to 1 to the treatment arm, which is the investigational combination. The first time we combine a bispecific T cell engager, mosunetuzumab, together with an antibody drug conjugate. So this is a targeted antibody drug conjugate. So basically, you're attacking the lymphoma from 2 different angles, trying to get as many lymphoma cells killed off as possible, hoping to this can translate into a very durable remission and provide patient a real hope and real benefit. And some of it's not just we put these two together for the first time. It's really built on our experience knowing how mosunetuzumab work, how polatuzumab work. And we test this in a phase 2 study, one a single arm, and then we test in a randomized phase 2. So we saw very consistent signal. And in the meanwhile, also mosunetuzumab went from intravenous administration requiring long hours to subcutaneous injection. So really cutting it down to less than 20 minutes. So and we saw very similar efficacy as a single agent. So that's what promised to do this to coin this regimen outpatient setting. Really going against the traditional thinking. The regimen needs to be very intense to have a good response. This regimen is not intense, but it's very effective. So I think that what we have found in this sum of global phase 3 studies, right, it met the primary endpoints, progression-free survival, really triple what's in the control arm, RGMarks. There are some questions about whether RGMarks is the right control arm, but back in 2021, in this patient setting, transplant ineligible, at least have one prior line of therapy, the CAR-T as a second line was not approved yet. It was approved in 2022. So the GMOX, in my mind, is a reasonable control arm, especially when thinking about from a global perspective. Like our goal is to get an effective regimen to as many people as possible, regardless where they are. So the study met the overall response rate endpoint, also met the progression-free survival endpoint. The response rate, complete response rate, double what we see in the control arm. And when we look at so in this ASCO, where we put an updated longer follow-up, there are more events to see whether we still continue to see this benefit. And the answer is yes. We continue to see very durable responses. So for those patients who achieve a complete remission, after an initial complete remission to mosunetuzumab plus polatuzumab, more than 60%, so 2/3 of them continue to stay in remission, after 2 years. And those patients who And with longer follow-up, we also have not seen any concerning safety signal. So the safety of this combination also has stood up to the time test, and it remains as the immune-based therapy has the lowest second release syndrome with regard to overall rates and also severity among all bispecific combination monotherapy and including CAR-Ts too. So 93% of patients don't really need tocilizumab or corticosteroid to manage their second release syndrome. Most of them are grade 1 and can be managed with Tylenol or NSAID with supportive measures. I really like that you bring up this point. I think that when people hear about second release syndrome, if you don't have experience, when you hear the term, it might trigger some uncomfortable way managing this patient. But a grade 1 literally just like a fever. When we have viral infection, you could have a fever, right? Mostly with hydration, with something like antipyretic like Tylenol, acetaminophen, can really mitigate it effectively. So the goal of this is another thing that built into this regimen is we really try to minimize corticosteroid use because many patients when they're diagnosed with diffuse large B-cell lymphoma or in the relapsed refractory setting, they are in their 60s, they're older. We really want to minimize unnecessary complications from all the medications. So this is also a regimen. Corticosteroid as pre-medication was only required during cycle 1, only on the date of mosunetuzumab injection. So very minimal use. And we also look at different age groups. So we use 65 years old as the cutoff. And we see very comparable efficacy, very comparable complications in those patients in a younger or older group. So it's not that you're older, you cannot get this regimen. You're older, you can still get this regimen. Yeah, I think that the main clinical implication of this was a phase 3 study. It's a validated study. So it really demonstrated you don't need to have very intense chemo to get patient into a good, very durable remission. So I really think this regimen, this result really set a new standard for those patients who are considered other than chemo, no other options. So this one delivers the highly effective therapy with very safe and manageable side effect profile. So it does bring realistic hope and help for those patients. And I'm also hoping that that colleagues in the community settings can really begin to adopt this regimen. We're putting a lot of effort really trying to build up people's confidence how to give this regimen for a patient to have close to their home. Yeah, absolutely. I think that you also cuts down those potential complications, right? So I think that when you look at the chemo free, or technically speaking, this one is as a chemo light because the CD79B antibody drug conjugate polatuzumab has a MMAE as a payload, which is considered as chemotherapy, but it's very targeted. So it dumps the warhead into the target cells. So it's specific, unlike most of the chemotherapy treatment are non-specific. So I would call this probably, you can say conventional chemotherapy free or chemo light. Oh, absolutely. I think that it's really gratifying to see how much the field has changed, even just then, from 10 years ago. When I was a fellow in 2006 or 2007, for patient relapsed refractory setting with large B-cell lymphoma, if they're not transplant candidate, then basically, they have very short lifespan. It's chemo or another chemo, really no good options. And now we have so many different ways, targeted immune-based or target and immune-based treatment. The goal is really to offer highly effective treatment, but with very reasonable side effect profile. And the goal is really to, how can we still provide durable remission, to those patients who otherwise cannot get CAR-Ts or cannot move on to autologous stem cell transplant, which those were the conventional sense we say, those regimen probably cures patients. And for bispecific-based regimen, I think really I feel like we are like an early era during when CAR-T was first initially approved. We don't know whether those patients will cure or not. So many of those patients, or some of them, after they got new remission with CAR-T, they move on to allogeneic stem cell transplant, right, for a long-term cure. But now we know CAR-T actually can cure 50% of patients. So with bispecific, I think that with longer follow-up, like 5 years follow-up, you know, I do believe a subset of patients, will be cured. I myself have patients, we put on mosunetuzumab regimen way back in when it was a phase 1, phase 2 testing back in 2018. I have quite some patients still stays in remission. So in a year or two, they will be 10 years. Are they cured? I hope so. I hope we can say that.